Do you want your IELTS Writing Task 1 essay to hit Band 8? Let's find out how, using this line graph as an example. At first glance, this line graph might look a bit overwhelming. There are 5 lines all tangled together. But don't panic. Let's take a closer look at the question first. It says, the graph below shows the annual visitor spend for visitors to New Zealand from 5 countries for the year 1996 to 2014. The unit we can see is expenditure in New Zealand dollars. For every Task 1 question, the first step is to paraphrase. So when you paraphrase, don't look at the question text alone. Check the chart too. For example, if you ignore the y-axis, you might miss a unit is in NZ dollars. And notice that the question itself doesn't mention the 5 countries. That information is only on the graph. So, our paraphrase could be, the line graph illustrates the amount of money tourists from 5 countries, namely Australia, the USA, the UK, Japan, and China, spent while visiting New Zealand between 1996 and 2014. Here, I identified the type of graph and replaced the shows with illustrates, spent with the amount of money, and added 5 countries to make it complete. Once you've done this, you're one step closer to Band 8. Then, we need to write an overview. In this part, you should give a general picture of the graph, not including detailed data. For line graphs, it's especially important to look at the starting and ending points. At the start, 1996, Australia clearly ranked first at just over 1,000 NZ dollars, while China was the lowest, almost none. By 2014, Australia still ranked first, and China remained the lowest. Both countries ended higher than they started. Now let's look at the USA, the UK, and Japan. They also showed higher ending points than their beginnings. So, our overview could be, overall, tourist expenditure from all 5 countries increased over the period, although there were some fluctuations. Among them, Australia contributed the most to New Zealand's tourism revenue, while China contributed the least. Notice that the overview highlights key trends and standout countries, no specific numbers or small details. Now, comes to the complex part, the details. You should always divide this section into 2 paragraphs. So, the first task is to decide how to group the data. Since line graphs show trends, one idea is to group countries by trend direction. At first glance, Australia, the USA, the UK, and China all show an upward trend, while Japan declines overall. But that division makes Japan a group of 1, not ideal for comparison. Let's try grouping by both contribution and trends. Australia and the USA contributed the most. China contributed the least. Meanwhile, Japan and the UK show opposite patterns. When one rose, the other fell. So we can group Australia, the USA, and China together, and UK and Japan together. That gives us contrast and balance. As mentioned, always start from the beginning year. Since Australia was the biggest contributor, we'll start here. In 1996, Australian visitors spent just over 1,000 NZ dollars, followed by the USA at approximately $800. We've described their starting points. Next, let's look at their peaks, which are also important in line graphs. As you can see, Australia and the USA peaked in different years, so we need to describe them respectively. Both countries saw an upward trend in spending, with Australia peaking at around $2,500 in 2006, and the USA reaching about $1,700 in 2010. Finally, let's describe the ending point. As you can see, after their respective peaks, Australia experienced some fluctuations, while the USA saw a decline. So, we can write as such: despite some fluctuations in Australia's figures and a decline in those of the USA after their respective peaks, expenditure from these two countries remained highest by 2014, at roughly $2,000 for Australia and $1,200 for the USA. Now, let's move on to China, the smallest contributor. In contrast, China had the lowest tourist spending in 1996. However, it experienced a sharp rise, reaching a peak of $500 in 2004, before declining and stabilizing at about $400 in 2014. That completes detail paragraph 1. Now, let's describe the UK and Japan together. At the start, both countries spent just below $500, but their trends moved in opposite directions. In addition, Japan's spending surpassed that of the USA in 2001, which makes this point quite important. Japan then peaked in 2002, another key moment. Therefore, 2002 can be used as our reference year. So we can write as such: the UK and Japan started at similar levels, just below $500, but followed opposite trends during the next 6 years. Japan's expenditure surpassed that of the USA in 2001, peaking at over $100 in 2002, while UK spending dropped to roughly $200. After 2002, British expenditure increased sharply, surpassing Japan around 2006 at $800 to become the third largest contributor. Meanwhile, Japanese spending gradually declined to just above its initial level, slightly over $500. That's it, your Band 8 line graph made easy. I'm Anita, and I'll catch you in the next one.